Hello folks, this is Greg Gilbert, host of Python's Paradise, and welcome to the film review section of my podcast, where I go back and I go year by year, month by month on film reviews, and I thought this would be something fun so I could give my reflection on certain films, and I think I'm going to start here with 1996. This is 1996 edition, and here is January 1996, the year I started film criticism. And I get a half a dozen films from the month of January that I'm going to talk about, and we're going to start with January 12th, where I actually reviewed 4 films from that month, And I guess we'll go alphabetically with Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. And I strongly recommend you drink your juice in the hood or anywhere and just enjoy this movie. This is a hilarious satire of Spike Lee and John Singleton films. And basically, it's done by the Wayans brothers, Sean and Marlon Wayans, who would later do Scary Movie, and I love Scary Movie, so obviously I had to go check this out, and we didn't get that in our theaters here. So I saw this quite recently, and I laughed my ass off, and it makes fun of all the tropes you see, and all the, I guess what they call black films. And, it starts out with the statistics about black communities, and people being gunned down before 21. Of course, done by the Wayans brothers. They make this look funny, and there's a lot of funny jokes in this movie. You got Sean Wayans, who's being dropped off by his mother, who makes a statement that she wasn't staying around because women do not have strong roles in these movies. A nice breaking the fourth wall. And then Sean goes in to stay with his father, who happens to be younger than him. Go figure. It's a Wayans brothers movie, just go with it. And he ends up hooking up with a woman that is bad news. She's involved with a gang-related lifestyle, and she's got a bunch of kids. And if that's not enough of a warning, when he first meets her, she turns to the kids and say, "What do you say?" And they all say in unison, "Who are you, my daddy?" Yeah, so Sean Wayans very funny in this movie. There's a funny sight joke where this woman's cooking and she points towards some herbs and salt and pepper shakers, and she said, "Hand me some of that shit." And he pulls out the shaker that's got the word shit on the side of it. That was funny. And of course, you got Marlon Wayans as his cousin Lock Dog, who seems to evade to pull guns out of nowhere. But he's got a funny joke where he lands a job, and it's like, who would hire him? Well, he gets hired as a crash test dummy, which, of course, he wants to go in for seconds. So, this movie's got so many great sight jokes in it. I laughed a lot and had a great time with it. And I give Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood a 9 out of 10. Definitely go check that out. Great movie. And also released that week, we had Dunston Checks In. Now, I'm not a big fan of going to family films, I don't like sitting in a theater full of loud, screaming kids, but Dunston I decided to check out. And we got it here. Number 1, I love animals, and the orangutan is said to be, according to research I had on the internet, the 3rd smartest animal on the planet, right behind the chimpanzee and bottlenose dolphin, and just ahead of elephants and the raven. And of course, the hotel that he's checking into, is just a beautiful location, and there's all kinds of places for an orangutan to get into in a hotel. And of course, the plot centers around Dunston as who's owned by a jewel thief, played by Rupert Everett, who he's had better days, and Dunston the orangutan ends up being befriended by this kid, Eric Lloyd of the Santa Claus, who is the son of one of the workers in the building, played by Jason Alexander, who came from Seinfeld to play in this deadpan role. And he's under pressure because there's somebody inspecting the hotel, and Faye Dunaway, who went from Oscar win for Network to this, is his towering, demanding boss, whose best scene has her get a face full of cake. You got Paul Rubens playing an exterminator who gets slapped around by the orangutan. Very little of this stuff is funny. I think probably the one thing I found interesting is in the screenplay, third act, there's someone's identity is revealed that I didn't see coming. So I thought that was interesting. But all in all, it's a good-looking film about what happens when something that doesn't belong in a particular place invades it, and what happens. I give Dunston Checks In a 4 out of 10. Kids might enjoy it, but I think it's too juvenile for adults. Also released on January 12, 1996, we had Eye for an Eye, which for me I think is easily one of the worst films of the year. And I'm a Sally Field fan from way back. And here she plays a mother who hears the murder of her daughter over her cell phone and drastically tries to get back, but too late. And Kiefer Sutherland is brought in as a suspect, who is a criminal. Ed Harris plays her husband, who is growing frustrated because she's playing investigator / vigilante on Kiefer Sutherland. Now, where I have some problems with this film is the fact that Kiefer Sutherland is definitely presented as an asshole, a lowlife, a douchebag, what have you. The problem is we're never shown that he actually committed the murder. So I'm left asking the question, what if he was innocent? What if he was just a real shithead, you know? And she's targeting the wrong guy. Now, of course, the screenwriter, being lazy, doesn't make it that complicated for us, obviously. But Kiefer Sutherland, this has got to be... doesn't take much ambition to play this role. He's done better. But nonetheless, John Schlesinger has done better movies. He's, of course, the director. He made Midnight Cowboy, Marathon Man. This is not to that caliber. And I didn't care for how the movie used its message. This message misses the mark because Sutherland's character is he's rightfully being targeted, but yet, the same token, without proof, you're just speculating. So I hated how this movie used as corrupted its message, and it's a very standardly done thriller. I give it a 0, which is not something I give out a lot, but despite the talent involved, this was pure shit. An eye for a bag of shit. That's what I give it. And the final film I'm going to talk about from January 12th is To If by Sea, starring Dennis Leary and Sandra Bullock. My story behind this film is my brother and I went in the winter, trekked into town to go see this, and both were sorely disappointed. Sandra Bullock was were both big fans of at the time, who had done Speed and the much better While You Were Sleeping in terms of rom-com at the time. She did The Net, which I wasn't a big fan of, but certainly liked it better than this. To It by Sea has her and Dennis Leary as two criminals trying to get away from the law. And they outwit the law and they get into this little community. And had it stayed with that, I would have probably enjoyed it a lot better, because it starts out well with them speeding away from the law. Then it just falls into them getting into this little community where she wants to get away from crime life, and she wants to try to live a normal life, and of course wants Dennis Leary to grow up. And along the way she ends up falling for some guy in the community, and it becomes a yawner quick, quite boring. To It by Sea. Well, if you're by sea, go by the ocean. Go by any body of water that doesn't have anything to do with this movie. I don't know. I found this movie so boring, after a great start. And to make things worse, there's absolutely no chemistry between Dennis Leary and Sandra Bullock. I think probably the only laugh I got was Dennis Leary using a gun to fish. Outside that, very dull film. So much potential not matched. Like Dunston Checks In, I give it a 4 out of 10. Next we move on to January 17th with From Dusk Till Dawn, which I saw at our old Twin Cinemas here, which has been closed since 2000. And From Dusk Till Dawn, of course, it's the story of two criminals played by George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino, who take a family hostage. You got Harvey Keitel playing a priest or a minister who has lost his faith due to his wife's deaths, and of course, he's got a son and daughter played by Juliette Lewis with him. And the first 2/3 of this movie are great, with the crime and the hostage taking. George Clooney has a great edgy performance in this movie, and I thought he was really, really strong here. Very different role for him at the time. Quentin Tarantino, unfortunately, really brings this film down, because I don't know what he's doing with his voice, that little high-pitched voice. He's the psychotic one of the two. I can take Quentin Tarantino in small doses. He's a great director, phenomenal director. But in terms of performance, small doses. Like Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, he's fine in those. But in something like From Dusk Till Dawn, he's just, his performance is so bad it's distracting. You do have some other great performances in this movie. Harvey Keitel as the priest is really good in this, and of course you got Selma Hayek as somebody they meet at this bar, this sleazy bar, and she's of course doing an exotic dance with a massive albino python draped over her shoulder. Now, everybody of course remembers that scene, but my story behind this movie is I turned to get, because I had a knapsack with me and I had food in it or something, and I turned to get something out of it at the wrong time during this movie, because when I looked back up at the screen, there was Selma Hayek taking a massive chunk out of Quentin Tarantino's neck. Maybe she was getting tired of his performance too, who knows, but needless to say, I was like, what just happened? Suddenly the bar was infested with vampires, and to me the movie halted. The makeup effects were alright, but I'm not squeamish. I'm okay with gore effects, But I hate it when a movie is trying to make me throw up. And I think that Robert Rodriguez, the director, was going out of his way to see that I puked by the end of this film. Because the violence was extremely gory and extremely graphic to the point where it was not necessary. But nonetheless, if you're a big horror film fan, you might want to check this out. I give From Dusk Till Dawn a 7.5 out of 10. It would have gotten an 8, a solid 8, had it not been for Quentin Tarantino's performance. But as it is, a 7.5. The final film I'm going to talk about came out January the 26th, and it's called Big Bully, starring Rick Moranis as a writer who goes back to his hometown to teach a course because... teach a course on writing, and Tom Arnold plays Fang, his old high school bully. There's an interesting back premise to this film where they were kids, and Tom Arnold bullied Rick Moranis as kids, and Tom Arnold's character ended up stealing something, and Rick Moranis was responsible for the authorities finding out, and Tom Arnold ending up in juvie detention. So here we are years later, and one of the things I liked about this movie was what they did with Tom Arnold's character, because now he's a shop teacher, and of course, predictably, you know that they're going to end up meeting and clashing and doing a back and forth. But what I like is the home life of Tom Arnold, because he lives in basically a trailer trash neighborhood. His wife is played by Carol Kane. He's got 3 or 4 kids, one of which is well behaved. None of them, except for that one kid, listen to him. But he's got a good heart, except when he discovers who Rick Moranis is, and then it becomes a back and forth. Now, the film was directed by Steve Miner, who's known for directing horror movies like Friday the 13th Parts 2 and 3, House, Halloween H2O, Lake Placid, but he's also directed other films like, he did a horse drama with Gabriel Anwar, he did Forever Young, My Father the Hero, stuff like that. And Steve Miner really offsets the tone of this movie, because sometimes I'm not sure if I'm supposed to laugh at this comedy or be thrilled, because the tone is kind of out of whack. But Steve Miner, I love the scenes where Tom Arnold is stalking Rick Moranis, because it kind of reminds me of his horror film roots. But nonetheless, we know where this movie is coming. But I gotta say one thing about this movie, I was able to relate to it a lot. It was probably my favorite film of the month because I could relate to it. I was bullied as a kid, so I knew what the Rick Moranis character was dealing with. But at the same token, I kind of knew what the Tom Arnold character was feeling too, because I was also an annoying kid, which means sometimes I was bullied. Looking back, I deserved it. So I kind of understood him as well. So I gotta say, with Big Bully, I'm going to give the film a 6 out of 10. If you're a big comedy fan, had a really good cast in it. I mean, Rick Moranis, you had Tom Arnold. Out of the supporting characters, I think only Curtis Armstrong as a neurotic teacher was really interesting, who is paranoid of Rick Moranis, who is reacting whenever Tom Arnold's shooting peas at him in the cafeteria. Other characters kind of flat. I mean, you got Carol Kane, you got Don Knotts as a principal, you got Julianne Phillips as a teacher / love interest, who's really flat and predictable in this movie. You got Jeffrey Tambor as a neighbor, a lot of talent, and Moranis' childhood friends seem to be very one-note in their comic elements regarding sticking your whole fist in your mouth or playing with fire. A little over the top. So But nonetheless, it's my favorite film of January 1996 is Big Bully. But I give it a 6 out of 10 because it's certainly not the best of the year, or best of the month. So, in retrospect, folks, Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood gets a 9 out of 10. Check that one out if you want a great laugh. The movie's hilarious. And then, of course, we got From Dusk Till Dawn with a 7.5 out of 10. If you're a big horror fan and can sit through a bad Quentin Tarantino performance, check out From Dusk Till Dawn. And if you're a real die-hard comedy fan like I am, take a look at Big Bully with Rick Moranis and Tom Arnold. There's certainly some lessons being learned in that one. The other films I talk about on this list, you can pretty much skip them, especially Eye for an Eye. They're not needed. But do join me as I'll have another half dozen films for February 1996 as we continue on with the films of 1996 and some of the stories I have on my film-going experiences that year. So, folks, don't be a big bully, but also don't be a menace while drinking your juice in South Central in the hood. Just don't.